Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, Jordan Ott speaks for the very first time as the next head coach of the Phoenix Suns. What did we learn? And what changed about our impressions of the next man to lead this team? Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Phoenix Suns. I'm Brendon Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen here on this Wednesday. Don't forget, Locked On Suns, free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Just click that follow or subscribe button. Do what thousands of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everydayer. Get locked on to the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. Today's episode brought to you by the wonderful people at Gametime, the best place to buy any ticket. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA when you do to get $20 off your first purchase. All of our impressions of the Jordan Ott press conference, what he said about the Spartan connection, Devin Booker, and how our impressions changed. Joining me to break it down, as always, from the Wild West Valley, my fellow Suns credentialed media member. How are we feeling? Ben Garcia.
So good. It was good to see you today. We actually, slapped hands. That's as far as that went. No hugs were exchanged, but yesterday took a I think earned day off. You decided it'd be more fun for you to go to Raw. You're a big wrestling guy, big wrestling guy. What? Oh, you didn't even end up going.
Long story, but they fell through on the ticket set hookup, and I don't know what happened, but it was going to be kind of a free ticket through media anyway, and I was only going to be able to go for part of the show, and a million things were working against me, so it didn't work out.
Were you disappointed?
That's all right. I packed my apartment more, and here we are. Was I disappointed? No, I wasn't really disappointed. It would have been cool to check it out, but like I said, I was never going to stay for the whole thing because I didn't have a whole night to give up. I had to be at physical therapy, and then whatever. We're packing, I said, so it's all right. But we did see each other today in Arcadia at the Verizon 5G Practice Center, where we heard from Brian Gregory, the new general manager of the Suns, as well as Jordan Ott. And just give it to me. What was your biggest takeaway? What'd you think coming off of the presser?
Really humble guy. I think that goes a really long way. I thought, impressions as a whole, I thought he did a really good job. I don't think there's any sense at this point of winning the press conference. Last year, it was a lot about Mike Budenholzer talking about how he grew up on the Suns, the Holbrook connection, and it turned out that was all just a bunch of nonsense. Today was meet the teacher night. You can ask a few questions and kind of get a little bit of background on him. Seems like a very humble guy. What was that?
They went pretty long.
They went about 45 minutes.
Almost everybody got multiple questions in. It got into actual basketball details and things like that, which usually, like you said, it can be, hey, meet the new guy, the generalities, and then take a picture. This was pretty deep.
And he stayed after to even talk for a few minutes after the initial press conference and a media scrum where he's answering questions as well. I thought he came off very confident, a little intimidating. The guy smiled, I think, once at the end. There was at the beginning where he was very grateful to be there, and at the end. But in the middle of that, it was all business. I think my biggest impression that I took from that, I wrote this down too, because at that point it was Ryan Dunn, Jalen Bridges, Oso Iguodala, Royce O'Neal wasn't there yet. But he, and you and I both looked behind us when this happened. He was talking about relationships, and he pointed to the three guys in the back of the press conference, in the back of the arena, the practice facility, and said, "You guys have a really hard job." Originally, I thought he was talking to us. And then I realized, he's pointing to the players behind him. He's already starting to build relationships. I think that goes a long way to acknowledge three young guys, one of them who I don't think will ever sniff real minutes for the Suns, and say, you guys have a hard job.
To do that to my guy, Jalen Bridges.
Yeah, but I thought that was really telling for something that you and I have been dying for, which is building relationships? Was there, which is something we haven't had? Is there something that stuck out to you in terms of something like that?
Yeah, I don't want to. I agree. Because my point was going to be very similar, so I'm not going to act like I don't agree. But at the same time, I do just want to be realistic too. A lot of Bud's press conference was, he went to or was about to go to visit Nurk in Europe.
Yeah.
He had the relationship built in with Grayson where, they had kind of talked about the weight gain. Maybe some of this was media day that I'm also getting mixed up with, not just Bud's introductory press conference.
Either way, you're right.
Yeah, and so I don't know. I think you'd kind of be an idiot not to be hooking up with your players, the stars who we're going to talk about with the book side in the next segment, as well as the young guys. But to bounce off of what you're saying, because I also got an impression from him for sure that the personal side is important. And along those lines, my main thing, hearing him talk and kind of getting into his mind a little bit during this, was he was specific about basketball, right? Like he said, winning the possession game is going to be really big, playing faster, playing an aggressive kind of defense that allows you to play faster because you're actually creating turnovers, which the Suns did not do at all last season. He gave me some details about Book when I asked him at the scrum. I'll talk about it in the next segment. But you could tell that actively during even those moments when he was acknowledging that he is a tactician, video, work like crazy on a whiteboard and in the practice gym guy, he has an awareness, like clearly he has put the time in, or somebody's in his ear, or he has known that when he gets this opportunity, he has to nail the people side of it. And he referenced that so many times. He's talked about how, the level of talent in the NBA these days is so extreme that you have to let guys know what you can do for them right away. At how quickly the job of a coach, or not the job of a coach, the relationship dynamic between a coach and a player goes from, he talked about respecting the position, respecting the title, and it quickly flips to, how are you making me better? That level of mutual respect. He talked about it with, when I asked him about building out the assistant coaches around him, he said, I respect the craft of coaching in this league, and I know that I need to rely on basically those who came before me. He didn't, elaborate a ton on that, but I asked him about veteran guys around him on the staff since he's a first-timer, and he was like, basically, I would be an idiot not to take seriously what I can learn from others. Like, he is so aware that he can't just be the guy who started in the video room. And I thought that was really cool, because I think that that's a lesson that we've seen some of these dudes like JJ Redick and Joe Mazzulla, who we've compared him to, have to learn those lessons. And it seems like he'll probably have his growing pains of that too, but he's at least on that wavelength and not going to skip that step.
He seems like he's someone who is very intense and you're never going to think about Jordan Ott. And granted, we talked to him. The media talked to him for 45 minutes today. I'm not going to be able to learn someone's story in that amount of time. But he seemed like someone that he might actually be over-prepared and, have so many plays that sometimes that can actually put him in a chokehold of what he's doing on the court. It's just too much information. He is going to have to learn, I'm sure, to find a healthy balance between those two. And another thing I kind of got from him was he almost, because in the beginning, he seemed like very grateful to be there, but it was almost to the progressing of that press conference where he was like, holy crap, I can't screw this up. And it's almost like he was trying to tell us, either through basketball talk or just being straight up, was like, I've been waiting for this moment my entire life. I don't want to let this thing slip through the cracks.
For sure. But another thing I also appreciated about him was he acknowledged that it had never felt real to him until the past year. And if you think back, he was a finalist for Charlotte last year. He got turned down. Now, in hindsight, I'd probably rather have the Suns job than that. So maybe it worked out for the best. But maybe that job was that opportunity, I should say, came as somewhat of a surprise to him. We know that Charlotte tends to have to scrape the bottom of the barrel because they don't spend a lot of money and they're a small market and they've been bad for a long time, although the guy they got's pretty good. And you can tell that he took it very seriously since then. I'm preparing to be a head coach now. Maybe before that, he was, of course, every assistant wants to be that, but he's only 39, 40 years old. He was very specific that it became real for him in that moment, and basically everything since then, you're right, has been building toward it. And I think because of that, he feels the magnitude of getting that opportunity. So, yeah, I thought he was super honest. I thought he was pretty thoughtful with what he was saying. It wasn't just the niceties and the pleasantries and the vague stuff. And I got to say, I was incredibly impressed. I really feel good about it.
You know what I think part of makes us feel even better about Jordan Ott was because we just came off of 2 press conferences, one in Matt Ishbia that actually turned out to be kind of bad, and then Brian Gregory's, who was like awful. And even today, I told you, I was like, man, every time this guy speaks, it just feels worse every time he talks. It almost feels like Nico Harrison, like, stop talking. He was so much better than them. So by comparison, it even just looks like the Grand Canyon. So I think that has also helped our perception of how we see him. And yeah, man, I was impressed too. I think I am just more and more bought into him. I just continue to hope he's the one that's actually allowed to pull all the strings on his side of the aisle, being everything coaching.
Yeah, and who he hires as an assistant and how the team plays and things like that will obviously tell us a lot. But first, well, we said first impression when he got hired, second impressions as we read some more articles. I guess this was third impression, but he aced it. Let's talk about what he had to say about the looming specter of the Michigan State connection, as well as some in-depth thoughts about how he will use and get to know Devin Booker, the obvious centerpiece of the team. Next. First, today's show is brought to you by Wayfair. There's nothing like stepping into your own outdoor space and feeling like you've escaped to a personal oasis. If you're wanting to upgrade your patio this season, Wayfair has made it so easy. Turn it into a space that feels like yours, comfortable, stylish, and ready for summer. Wayfair has everything you need to level up your outdoor space. A conversation set, outdoor bar, fire pit, hot tub, gazebo, and yes, even the perfect string lights to set the vibe. It's like giving your backyard that resort feel without the resort price tag. We are, as I've referenced numerous times now, moving, and I gotta say, Wayfair is what comes up first almost anything you're trying to buy. We were looking at a chair for the living room that's like kind of a bigger loungy thing, like almost like a big beanbag, but you don't obviously want a beanbag chair because you're not a kid. They got that. They've got outdoor stuff. Don't wait. Make your outdoor space your dream oasis today and check out all the great stuff Wayfair has. Enjoy it all summer long. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop their huge outdoor selection. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair. Every style, every home. All right, Ben, let's keep it rolling here. So, where do you want to start? Michigan State or Booker?
Michigan State, 100%.
I thought this might have been his best answer of the entire press conference, what he had to say when he was pressed about the history and the connection with regard to the Spartans. He said he took a minute, gathered his thoughts. You could tell he knew the question was coming. And I'll tell you, at that press scrum, he said he knew that question was coming. And he said, I earned this job. First, off the bat, let's get that out of the way. And then he went on to say that obviously he appreciates his time there and, everything else. He later discussed a little bit about the impression that Tom Izzo made on him and everything. But I loved that level of confidence to not shy away from the fact that idea is out there, Ben, but also to say, basically, F it.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I want to get into what I want to think too, but I guess I would say this. Oh, Brendon, you're happy that when asked about that question, he didn't say, "Oh yeah, I wouldn't be up here without my connections to Matt Ishbia." Could
Well,
you?
I'll add some other background that he gave. He talked about Tom Izzo and the what he learned from him being that he, to really take seriously, again, what we talked about in that first segment, the personal relationships with players, which obviously you have to have in college. You're recruiting. It's a different job. But he was asked, Ben, about how when he met Ishbia and Gregory, both of them, he met Ishbia face-to-face for the very first time at the final round of interviews. He said he met Gregory in Cleveland in January when Gregory traveled to Cleveland for a Suns-Cavs game, and Ott made a point of saying hello just because I'm sure he knew that they had the same background. But that's it. These are not guys who were buddies before that. So
They're frat brothers.
It would have been untrue for him to say that he was only up there because of Michigan State, of course. And I think you and I figured that we were in agreement that was a little overblown. But again, to circle back to basically tell everybody to go shove it, who is accusing that of being true.
Yeah. I was I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know who asked the question. Someone from the AP. I don't know who they are. Not going to act like I know who they are. And I don't want to come after them personally, but I also didn't like how the question was phrased. I thought I think it was a little childish. It was like the jokes of the Phoenix, people are calling you guys the Phoenix Spartans. I'm like, okay, the guy's been here for 30 minutes.
It's also a lighter way. Maybe if he asked the question like a douchebag, then he doesn't
that's a good
maybe
point.
He pisses a Jordan Ott off and he goes, what kind of question is that? I'm up here trying to celebrate getting a head coaching job. Get out of here.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I don't want to go after that guy at all. Probably a really smart guy, way more mature than I am.
David
Brent.
I know him very well. Yes.
I don't know him. What I will say is I don't know if I would ask it like that. Granted, I didn't ask anything. I was really happy with the media for not asking that question, although I wouldn't have been upset that they did. Because if you and me and a lot of people are there were saying the same things of like, this guy's qualified, then why the hell are we asking the question? Because I think it's
absolutely have to ask that question.
Well, someone finally did.
The story about his hire. It is the national headline around the Suns' selection for their head coach. No one knows who Jordan Ott is in the whole wide world. Mm-hmm. The thing that became the story about him, he had to answer that. He had to address it. And I frankly wish Gregory had been able to address it and Matt Ishbia had been able to address it. I mean, you and I have brought it up every day since he got hired. You have to.
Yeah.
It's the elephant in the room. It lets him off the hook to not talk about it, in my opinion.
It's totally fair. I think that's more of a little old school way of thinking of it. If it's not my opinion of him, I wouldn't waste a question on it, but maybe that was his opinion on it. And that didn't seem like a question wasted. What I would say though is, I know Jordan Ott was not angry at him at all. No. It was like he was counting down when that question was going to be asked so we could mic drop on them. It was that good of an answer, which was almost like directing at the AP reporter, and not in a rude way or anything, just speaking to him because he asked the question through everyone else, which was, you think I got this job? You don't know my story. You think I got this job because 20 years ago I worked as a video coordinator because the first person that would hire me to do anything in basketball? Like, you are discrediting everything that my wife, who is here today, has seen me go through, my kids, me. Like, he felt offended. He seemed pissed off that someone would even dare ask him the question, but also he did it kind of respectfully, which was, I've earned this position. And I think you even heard me verbally be like, it's a great answer. That should instill all the confidence in you that the Michigan State thing is a little bit more of a caveat and like a feather in the cap of Matt Ishbia that he can continue hiring Michigan State guys. But this isn't Hetzel, right? This guy feels like he has earned this spot. So that's where I went with it, and I agree with you, man. 100%. He knocked it out of the park.
And people know how you and I don't buy into that. I would say, to change the framing a little bit, the media is not putting Ott in the position of being seen that way, Matt Ishbia is putting Jordan Ott in the position of being seen that way by embracing the cronyism that he has with how he's made his hires of people that he knows, people he's connected to, people who all happen to trace back to the same state. Matt Ishbia is the guy that anybody should be upset about for the accusation that there's a bias toward that region of the country, not the media. The media didn't make that up. It's a pattern that Matt Ishbia put upon this team. As for Booker, I asked him afterward. Somebody asked him about the relationship, and he, I don't think anything about that answer necessarily stood out to me. He was asked about what it meant to get Booker's basically approval, right? Which we heard in the reporting from Gambo and others as to how much that meant for Ott getting across the finish line. And he just said he was appreciative of it. And, Book's the North Star of everything going on with the Suns, and all that was expected. But I asked him about how he expected to deploy Book on the court after in the press in the scrum, and he said he referenced the Olympics, which I thought was pretty cool. Not that that's going to be how he's used, but I just said, we've seen him be on ball, off ball, playing the 1, playing the 2, even playing the 3. All sorts of different coaches and schemes and everything else. Like, having coached in the league the whole time he's been around, what have you learned, and what do you need to do to put him in the best position to succeed? And he said, yeah, and we've even seen him in the Olympics doing something completely different. And so he's proven he can do everything. And he basically made it sound like Book is the system. Book is the end-all, be-all of what we're going to be as a basketball team. So it sounded pretty open-ended and collaborative when it really got specific. Like, the way I'm going to put Book in position to succeed is figure out what Book wants to do to succeed and go from there, which I think is, at this point, I mean, with that being the only sure thing on the entire roster, I think that's a good approach to have. And I think playing faster is 100% going to help Book. He's never been able to be on a team that actually consistently embrace that. But it kind of goes back to what we've been saying throughout, where the people side and the relationship side, again, he very clearly seems to understand how important that is. And I don't know if we've really heard somebody go so hard on that side of it with Book in particular since Monty got hired. So it was good to hear.
Both guys seem uberly competitive. I mean, Devin Booker, I think we can tell, is like the ultimate competitor. Ott, from people we've talked to and from what we saw today, seems like a very competitive guy. It seems like today that those two things are going to really conjoin, like almost seamlessly, those two guys, because of how hard I think that they're going to work. He talked about Devin Booker's competitiveness at a draft workout when he was in Atlanta and instantly knew he was going to be awesome, or that he was different. So those guys are going to get along really well, man. I'm curious to see how he's going to fit in an Ott system, because Ott mentioned the Cleveland Cavaliers. Like, that's like his ideal way of playing. And I'm just like, okay, is Book going to play the Donovan Mitchell role, or is he going to play like a bigger Darius Garland role, but obviously a better version of that? So my mind started racking how they're going to use him.
I don't know if Ott's system, or even the Cavs, I would think of it bigger picture than that. I would think of it like even Ott today mentioned playing out of concepts rather than, being so married to an exact scheme. That's what I think the best teams in the league do, with how wide open the game is these days and how versatile every player on the court is. I think it's a general idea of how do we want to run things? What parts of the court are we trying to attack? And when you just watch in general rather than which players, how the Cavs play, tons of threes, off-ball movement, pace,
Fast.
Book, that's heaven for Book. So I would think of it that way. And if you think of it that way, we could see a definite bounce back from Devin Booker.
Yeah, not worried about that at all. The one thing I'd say is I think wanting to play out of like concepts, depending on your opponent that night, is much easier to do with a roster constructed like the Cavs, Whereas maybe you're going to have to dump things down a little bit because you're not going to have Garland, Mobley, Donovan, even off the bench, Hunter, and Ty Jerome. Like, I don't know how. Yeah, I don't know how easy that's going to be. So I think that's the final evolution. Is what you're like a couple years from now when they figure out the roster. I would agree. But for now, I think it's going to be a dumbed down version of that. Obviously,
sure. How did our thoughts change? What surprised us? What shocked us? Last thoughts on Jordan Ott's press conference next. First, today's show is brought to you by Gametime. There's nothing like the NBA playoffs. The intensity, the buzzer beaters, the fans losing their minds. It's the kind of atmosphere you must experience live, and this year's matchups are already delivering. If you want in, Gametime makes it fast and easy to get seats, even for the biggest playoff games, including the NBA Finals. Prices on the app actually drop closer to tip-off, and with killer last-minute deals, panoramic seat views, and no surprise fees, Gametime is a total game changer. Obviously, only 2 cities are getting to experience the thrill of the NBA Finals right now, but I will tell you, the Phoenix Mercury are off to a great start. If you want basketball, that is an awesome experience. Tickets are tend to be more affordable. The Mercury have their own big 3, and newsflash for everybody, they're actually holding up their end of the bargain instead of what we saw with the Suns this year. So get in. Check out a Mercury game if you want your basketball fix. Find great seats for as low as $100 or lower. Thanks to exclusive discounts with the Game Time guarantee, your tickets are 100% authentic, arrive on time, and give you the best price. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, Ben. Final thoughts on Jordan Ott's introductory press conference. Is there anything that surprised you, that your impression changed a little bit, or something that you just weren't expecting to see or hear today?
I just didn't expect him to be so intense. Like, it was all business. I joke, but I'm being serious of like, he kind of smiled in the beginning, like a little grin, like show how grateful he is to be here. And then, of course, he smiled for photo ops, but there was a little bit of crazy behind that guy, which I don't think is a bad thing. It looks like, to me, and I can only speak to it because this is how I feel sometimes, of like, it feels like he's been working so tirelessly, and I mentioned this before, to finally get to this spot, and he's here, and all he can think about now is how he's going to do it really, really well. He was intense. There was like a palpable energy. Like, he commands a presence. I don't think he's someone that after a game, if he's chewing out the guys after losing to the Kings by 40 like Frank Vogel did, he struck me as someone that players will listen to. And that's like the most important thing. So the intensity seems like his competitiveness. And then as well, the MSU question that just continued to stand out to me, that like, I belong here. All of those things lead me to believe that the Suns got potentially a grade A guy, but if anything, a solid head coach who I think you and I would be floored if he just doesn't work out in the worst degree, like Mike Budenholzer style. That's where I would go. I just continue to get buying into it is all.
Perfect for a young team too, just right, the way that he seems to kind of approach things, where maybe his kind of obsessiveness and competitiveness, if it was on a team where they're ready to go win a championship, it might feel like a little bit too much of a, not an overreach, but kind of get out of my way, right? Whereas I think with the team that's trying to, as far as we can tell, they're at least going to be a little younger. I don't know if they're going to be, they're not going to be rebuilding, but they're not going to have a 36-year-old as their best player and a 32-year-old in Beal and Nurk and Grayson and all these guys who've been in the league for a long time. I think that's going to be really good. I guess the other part of it to me, and I know I'm beating a dead horse with the comparisons to these other new coaches, but the other thing that a lot of these guys seem to have in common is almost this like mystical way of talking about like the sport and the game and some of this stuff. Like if you ever listen to like when Joe Mazzulla's gone on Pardon My Take, or, you know, JJ Redick, his interview with Victor Wembanyama was kind of like this, like these millennial coaches that are getting hired now who are like not too much older than us are very like cerebral in the way that they think about, you know, the job that they occupy, the leading of men, the getting, like he couldn't stop raving about Kenny Atkinson's curiosity.
Yeah.
He kept going back to, he talked about it in the press conference. He talked about it again in the scrum. He talked about how big of an impact Kenny has had on him. And he just kept coming back to the curiosity, which is not the type of thing you would typically hear a coach home in on. You would typically think, oh, I learned from Kenny, you know, the importance of off-ball movement, you know what I mean? Or the importance of player development, because Kenny came up that way and I came up that way, and it showed me how much you can really get the most out of a team if you're able to get players to be better individually in addition to working together, something like that. Instead, he just asks so many questions. He talked about how Atkinson showed him the importance of being interested in like the training staff's process and showing a care of that and being in your players' lives that way, and going and getting experience in a bunch of different places. Obviously, Atkinson went to Golden State, which is like the best possible, you know, graduate degree you can get as an NBA coach. But he said that it inspired him to go get more experience all across the gamut of the basketball world. I just think that the way he thinks about this job, which you and I agree he very clearly has been hungry for, is new age almost. And I just think it's cool, and it again seems to track with what's working. So I maybe selfishly, I'm just excited to like hear more from him, cover him, get to know him. He's way different than Mike Budenholzer was last year, where it was like, all right, we'll just sit through this again and hope they win tonight, you know?
Yeah, Budenholzer reminded me of like Eeyore, the way he talked. Everything just kind of seemed not great. And you left every press conference or watching every reel that is put out from him of like, you feel worse. Jordan Ott reminds me of a head coach that no matter how bad things are going, after the press conference, you're like, damn, I feel good with that guy being my leader. Like, it just feels like people respect him. And this is my final thought and my final question to you is, you mentioned this new wave of like hiring head coaches, Mazzulla, JJ Redick. Is that the new, like in football, right? It was like go offensive. In baseball, it's like pitch 60, throw 90 pitches by the sixth inning, throw really, really hard. We'll take it to the bullpen. Like the next evolution of the game. In hiring a head coach, is the new trend, and are the Suns on the right path of like, get these kind of almost quirky but obsessive head coaches who live and breathe basketball to coach your teams? I mean, I feel like Dagnall kind of follows that, maybe not Bickerstaff, but he kind of seems to follow that line of maybe the new trend of head coaches. Do you see what I mean there? And like, do you think the Suns are kind of following that line when they brought this guy in?
I mean, they told us they were, right? They wanted to go younger. And if you look at, I think it's a super fascinating topic that, what is it that makes these guys similar? Obviously, they didn't all start in the same place. They didn't all have the same background. JJ Redick was a high-level NBA player for a long time and won championships at Duke, versus Ott never played a lick of high-level basketball himself in his life. You know, Mazzulla was a low-level coach, had 1 year as an assistant in Boston, then all of a sudden he's a head coach. So it's different pathways, but they all do seem to have a lot of things in common. I don't know why, but if you look at this offseason, the guys who have been hired, it's Isalo in Memphis, Edelman in Denver, Mitch Johnson, who was already the coach of the Spurs after Pop's stroke last year, and now Ott. If you add those in with Redick and with Dagnall and with Mazzulla, that's a lot of high-profile hires recently who are all like under age 45. So that is a definite trend in the league. Go young, let these new types of dudes get their arms around an organization, and the results have been really good. So I think the Suns grabbing that, riding that wave right now, I'm glad they did. I mean, I would have been a lot more disappointed, no matter how this introductory press conference went, if they had gone with David Fizdale or James Borrego or something like that, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I like it, and it is tracking with what works. It's probably the only thing that they've done in the past 12 months that I've liked. So congrats.
I can't wait to see who they draft. Like, if the Suns trade KD to the Spurs and they get the 14th overall pick, I'm just curious to know
Jace
who
Richardson,
Jordan
we already
Ott.
know the answer on that one.
Stop it. There's no way.
I'm legit.
There's
At
no
this
way.
point, I'm not joking at all.
He's a guard. They don't need him.
I mean, they need everything
Well, okay.
at this point. I mean,
three
players I think are for sure going to be on the roster.
I would say, I actually like Jace Richardson. This is not a draft top. The point is I can't wait to see who is Jordan Ott's guy. And I hope it's not Jace Richardson, unless it really is his guy, but I'll never know that. I just am curious at the 14th overall pick, if that sort of thing happens, I would just be curious who is like his archetype of someone that he wants to insert into this team. I know that's kind of a weird question, but I'm curious. So we'll see.
Well, I mean, you never really know if the guy they draft is the coach's guy. I mean, could just be out of his hands. But I mean, I'm not sure. That's not me. I think everybody is expecting
it's
that.
It's too early for that. Can we wait at least another week before we start mocking?
It's also not like, I'm not saying they're going to draft a guy who should go 40th at 14. He's in that range.
He is a good player too. I'm actually fairly high on him, but it's like, even if they pick him, and I could be happy with the pick, it's just going to be annoying to sell.
Oh, it is. That'll wrap us up. Hit follow or subscribe if you haven't already. More coverage of this hire, Kevin Durant, hoopla, and more throughout the week. Enjoy your Wednesday. We'll catch you next time.